Hello, and welcome to Sleep Stories with the Slumbering Seagull. These videos were made to help you sleep. So wherever you are, underneath the sun or underneath the stars, get relaxed and comfortable and let yourself drift away. The Wandering Warrior and the Sweet Dove, Chapter 4. Lingering uncertainty plagued Andrew Speckle's mind as he grappled with the decision of assuming the throne in the king's stead. If more people learned that the king is gone, then that would put his trip in jeopardy, thought Andrew. King Haruto had left 2 days ago. Andrew was informed of the happenings of the day. Afia's army was growing stronger, and the Urian soldiers were getting along well with their allies. They shared their most effective skills with the military of Afia. An additional group of 10 more soldiers from Urian had arrived. They were checked in and verified at the gate. The people were becoming a bit restless, but seeing the reinforcements arrive gave them hope. It was hard to stay confined in the castle, but Andrew tried to make the best of it. He took private fighting lessons from the royal guardsmen, a few hours each day. When he wasn't training or chatting with the servants, Andrew enjoyed reading in the royal study room, learning of more and more kingdoms and lands he had never even heard of before. He noticed a rather large, specially placed book titled The Book of the Beginning. The book looked tattered and ancient. Andrew was quickly mesmerized by it. Its ragged appearance piqued his curiosity. He read multiple pages and enjoyed it more the further he read. That night, one of the servants interrupted his reading with a knock at the door. Andrew signaled one of the guards to open the door. The handmaiden apologized for the disruption and took a few steps in towards Andrew, looking quite uneasy. He asked her what was the matter. She told him she thought she saw someone sneaking around in the kitchen, but wasn't sure. Andrew alerted the guards, and 2 of them hurried out to the kitchen to investigate. The 2 guards returned shortly. One stayed outside the room with their captive. A young boy, they explained, was caught hiding in the royal kitchen. The boy squirmed in the guard's grip. "Please don't hurt me," he begged. "I had to come and see the king. I need to speak with him. It's urgent." Andrew was surprised to hear John's voice. He told the guards to allow the boy to enter. John looked dirty and was breathing heavy, probably from the fear and maybe a bit of a chase when the guards had discovered him. Andrew did his best to disguise his voice. Young man, what are you doing here? It's late, and you should be home in bed by now." "Sir, yes, my king. I'm so sorry to barge in like this, but I have to ask you something. I need your help." What's wrong?" said Andrew. I came from a town about 4 days' travel from here. I know that Baron and his men destroyed it, and I lost my whole family. almost my whole family. I still have my dad, but I don't want to lose any more people that I care about. Please don't make Andrew fight Barend. He pleaded, with tears in his eyes. Andrew held back the urge he had to reveal his true identity to John. That touches my heart, young one, that you would come all the way here to say that. The fact is, gallant boy, that Andrew made his own decision, and it was a hard decision, but he made a choice to help protect you and all of Afia. I'm not making him do anything. John started to settle down. He was still crying, but was clearly attempting to soak in Andrew's words. Andrew made this decision because he cares about you and all his friends and family very. A deafening crashing sound of shattering glass abruptly seized the awareness of all present. Then the sound of slashing blades. "John!" Andrew yelled out instinctively, no longer thinking of his disguise. Some of the guards closed in, their backs to Andrew, protectively encircling him. An engulfing sense of dread transformed John into a statue, leaving him frozen in place. "Protect the boy as well," Andrew shouted. One guard nearest to John picked him up and carried him over to Andrew. Another guard was watching his back. The doors of the study room were busted down, and 10 men from Urian drew swords and arrows. They outnumbered the team of 7 guards. Andrew quickly put together that they must be Barend's men, portraying Urian soldiers. An arrow took down 2 of the guards. 2 more guards bravely charged at the intruders, only to fall after being struck by arrows. "Are you here to kill me?" Andrew asked. The men grew smirks on their faces. "Not to kill you. Oh no, King Haruto. Not a chance. We need you alive and well." Another big crash at the window of the study. "Are you in league with Barend?" Andrew's questioning rang out. 3 more men dressed as Urian soldiers rushed into the room. "Barend is a good friend of ours, yes," replied the lead intruder. Eventually, only 1 remaining guard stood to defend Andrew and John. The leader of the intruders told his men to hold their fire and stand down. "Just come over here, and we promise to let your servant go in peace." Andrew was outnumbered. "We will put out the fire and leave the servant boy with your little guard here. Come on, I think that's more than fair." Andrew nodded and lowered his weapon. He wouldn't know what to do with himself if they harmed John. John knew well enough to remain silent. He looked terrified. The attacking intruders lowered their swords. "See?" said the leader. With a heavy heart, Andrew began making his way towards the intruders, before pivoting to look over at John once more. An unspoken farewell lingered in the fleeting glance. Andrew felt a wave of profound uncertainty. Would this be the final memory of one another? The melancholic thought hung thick in the air as Andrew turned away. He let out a sigh as he turned to resume on his path forward. The next thing he knew, one of the mercenaries had put a cloth over his face with chemicals on it to make him fall asleep instantly. When Andrew woke up, his arms were tied up behind him with rope and his legs shackled. His vision was blurry at first, but slowly cleared. Then he could see he was in some type of prison cell. There was a man asleep in the cell next to his. Andrew wondered who it was. Wait, could it be? Could this be King Leo? The king that had been kidnapped? Hello? Andrew said. Andrew's throat was dry and body was sore. The man in the other cell gave no response. Finally awake, I see. A gruff voice hung out from the dark. Barrand and a few of his men entered the small prison. Comfortable, Your Highness, Barrand sneered, turning his attention to Andrew. Though I suppose royalty titles are meaningless when one is an imposter. Andrew's blood ran cold. He had infiltrated Barrand's forces under the guise of King Haruto, but now found himself exposed and at the villain's mercy. Where is the real King Haruto? Barrand demanded, crouching before Andrew. And what of the crown prince's whereabouts? Andrew was never told of where the prince was positioned for safety reasons. I don't know, but even if I did, I wouldn't tell you a thing. Andrew mustered what defiance he could. I'll never betray them to the likes of you. A cruel smile twisted Barnes' features. We'll see about that. I can be very persuasive. The cell door slammed shut once more, encasing them in darkness. Andrew's gut twisted, dreading the interrogation yet to come. But his thoughts also turned to King Leo, trapped beside him, a secret comfort that he was not utterly alone against Barnes' ruthlessness. A weary voice came from the adjoining cell. My dear boy, you must figure out a way to free yourself. Does anyone know you've been captured? Andrew turned to see an older man with a golden crown atop his matted gray hair. I am King Leo of Eversmith. Those foul bounty hunters only keep prisoners alive if they can be useful in some way. You must find a way of escape immediately. I managed to convince them I knew the location of an ancient gold mine to lower their blades. For now. Andrew felt his stomach drop. Then we're to be ransomed, Your Majesty? Leo shook his head wearily. Barrand is no mere bandit. He is power hungry, and he is gathering a large army, an army that cares for riches much more than loyalty. He'll torture the map's location for me soon enough, and once he has what he wants, I'm afraid I will be no more. A shocked silence fell over the dank cells. Andrew struggled against his bindings, but there was no give. There has to be a way, Andrew started, but the unmistakable sound of heavy footsteps approached from the corridor. Leo met Andrew's eyes, his gaze full of sorrow and regret. Steel your mind, my friend, for Barnes' cruelty is bound by no civilized rules. Barrand and his men entered again. Are we feeling more cooperative yet? Barrand asked, a twisted smile playing across his lips as he approached Andrew. When met with stony silence, he tisked in mock disappointment. Loyalty is an admirable trait, but it won't do you much good when your captors control your sustenance. He nodded to one of the guards, who produced a small parcel and tossed it at Andrew's feet. Bread and water. Enjoy it while it lasts. Andrew's parched mouth watered at the meager provisions, but he refused to move. He refused to show weakness in front of them. Barin turned to King Leo. Well then, if hunger doesn't loosen your friend's tongue, perhaps revisiting our previous discussion will provide encouragement. He descended upon the shackled King Leo like a wolf on wounded prey. Grasping a fistful of the monarch's hair, Barin wrenched his head back viciously. The gold mine location, where is it? King Leo gasped in pain, but clenched his jaw defiantly. You'll never find it, he managed through gritted teeth. With a roar of frustration, Barin's free hand collided with the side of Leo's face in a brutal backhand. We'll just see about that. Blow after striking blow rained down. At last, Barin relented. He took a few deep breaths, then glared between the two captives. Barin nodded towards one of his henchmen, signaling for the thug to enter Andrew's cell. The brute wasted no time, his fist already coiled back in preparation. In a blurring motion, his knuckles shot forward, slamming directly into Andrew's eye socket. A guttural cry tore from Andrew's throat as white-hot pain poured through his face. He knew immediately the vicious blow would disfigure his eye into a gruesome black eye. His head hung limply, the world tilting as his now swollen eye socket throbbed in agonizing pain. One of you had better start talking, he snarled. Leo, I've waited long enough. You have one more day, and that's it. The cell door crashed shut once more, sealing them in their torment until Barin's inevitable return. Andrew's gaze met Leo's, a silent vow to withstand no matter what their captors did to them. There was a small space with bars to the side wall of the jail, outside of the cell parameters. They could see a small view of the night sky. Andrew wasn't sure what else to do. He had tried for hours to loosen himself with no luck. He remembered the words of Turo and King Harito. He also thought about the big book of the beginning he enjoyed so much to read. Okay, God. It seems like you're able to hear us when we talk to you. So, here I am. I'm trapped with no way out. I may lose my life, but worse, my family and friends, they're in danger. And I want to do more to help them, but if I won't be here to protect them, well, just please help them. If you decide to help me, then I offer you flooding rivers of gratitude. Andrew began to shed tears. I won't fight you any longer, a gentle voice whispered. Help is approaching. Suddenly, fear disappeared and peace settled in the prison room. In an unexpected upheaval, the very foundations of the prison quaked, causing the stout walls to rumble. Simultaneously, every cell door swung open, and the iron chains and ropes that had bound the prisoners crumbled away, granting them newfound freedom. Andrew, wide-eyed, hurried to help King Leo up. He was very weak and limp. Perhaps you should leave me, my friend. No, we're leaving now, together. Before even reaching the doorway, it swung open. They hobbled their way forward. Right after coming through the doorway, they walked out into a war zone. Barand and his men were scattered and being chased down by none other than King Haruto and the men from Windbell and Afia. On top of that, King Remuel and King Saji's men and the true Urian soldiers were all fighting, united. A soldier from Windbell offered to take King Leo to safer ground. Andrew was glad for the help and assisted the king on the back of the horse. I can send more men over to help you next, the soldier said. Andrew refused and told the soldier to hurry away with the king. The soldier agreed, but offered some of his provisions and handed Andrew a sword while wishing him the best. Andrew took a moment to drink up the water he had received and a quick bite of bread. He scanned the scene, trying to make sense of it all. The sun began to rise. In the midst of the chaos, a dove flew over the scene. She's here. Olive! Andrew thought with joy. He then realized one of Barnes' men was charging at him. He swung his sword, and in 2 skilled moves, he quickly defeated his opponent. Recharged with newfound energy, he zoned in on his next target. Evening the odds for a Urian ally with an Aphian medallion around his neck. He had been pinned down in a battle of 2 against 1. Thank you, Swift Light, the soldier said with a smile. Then they were back at it again a moment later. Barnes' army was immensely overwhelmed. Hands began to raise in surrender. But Andrew couldn't find Barnes himself anywhere. King Haruto rode up to Andrew on a grand horse. Andrew, I'm so happy to see you. I mean, Swiftlight Speckle. Thank you for your bravery. Barn was distracted and made vulnerable for the surprise attack, and I see that our dove is cheering along with us. King Haruto winked. Then their joyful reunion was ripped apart by an arrow that hit the king with a fatal blow. Andrew shielded himself and the king and moved the king and his horse as far off as he could. King Haruto, Andrew shouted, begging in his heart that the king would live. The king took short, quick breaths. Andrew, here, take this letter. Andrew took it and called for help. Andrew, I'm all right. If I make it, or if I don't, I'm all right. Andrew started to panic. You have only been kind and good to all whom interact with you. This should not be happening to you. My son is ready. It will all be all right, said King Haruto. Is it selfish of me to say I'm not ready? Andrew said through tears. King Haruto mustered up a soft smile, but winced shortly after. I love you, Andrew. You are a special young man, indeed. Do you know why they call me King Haruto the Wise? Andrew shook his head, awaiting the answer. Because I am wise, he laughed, and winced again in pain. All of my greatest wisdom comes from prayer. My greatest wisdom comes from the one who wrote the book of the beginning. A few Afghan soldiers came on the scene, but as soon as they examined the wound, they knew there was nothing they could do. The king began to softly sing. Wondrous grace, sweetly heard, rescued a soul like mine, once lost and drowning. How far you've come to carry me from dark to light, oh, from dark to light. And then he was no longer with them. Andrew's heart broke. He let the tears flow, but then anger boiled up inside of him. The soldiers stood guard and promised to stay there if Andrew wanted to get back to the fight. They offered the king's horse, a shield, and parts of their own armor over to Andrew. Andrew tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. His armor bore the scars of the battle. The armor, mix-matched but worked together for a noble cause, resembled the army of allies that were united in their pursuit of Barand and the last of his men. A personal vendetta led Andrew to charge despite the risk. Andrew firmly decided that no more honorable men would perish today. Barand, the treacherous outlaw, had taken refuge among the ancient oaks. His band of cutthroats, hidden in the foliage, rained arrows down upon Andrew and his fellow soldiers. The air hummed with the deadly flight of arrows, and the soldiers sought cover under their shields. Andrew's mind raced. He couldn't afford to lose more men. He signaled to his lieutenant, a seasoned warrior named Elar. Elar, he whispered, we'll flank them. You take half the men and circle wide. When I give the signal, charge from the side. We'll force Barand out of those trees. Elar nodded, his eyes focused. He led his group silently through the underbrush, their footsteps masked by the rustling leaves. Andrew's heart pounded as he faced the remaining dunes head-on. Their arrows thudded into shields, but Andrew's resolve held firm. Barand emerged from the shadows. Andrew got down off the horse and stepped forward. His blade shined as he drew it from its scabbard. Barand, Andrew called, this ends today. Barand's laughter echoed. You think you can defeat me? They circled each other, leaves crunching underfoot. Andrew's swordplay was precise, honed by all his training. Barnd, however, fought with a feral cunning, his movements unpredictable and lightning quick. Their blades clashed, a symphony of steel. Andrew parried, lunged, and countered. Barnd skillfully evaded Andrew's attempts to strike, taunting him. Barnd's dagger-like eyes narrowed. You fight for honor, Andrew. I fight for survival. Andrew's reply was a fierce thrust. But Barnd sidestepped, slashing at Andrew's shoulder. Pain flared, but Andrew pressed on. He couldn't let Barnd escape justice. The duel intensified. Barnd's blade grazed Andrew's cheek, drawing blood. Andrew's vision blurred, but he focused on Barnd's weaknesses. The slight hesitation before a strike. The favoring of his left leg. Then opportunity struck. Barnd lunged, overextending. Andrew sidestepped, spun, and slashed Barnd's thigh. The villain gasped, eyes wide, and collapsed to the forest floor. Andrew knelt beside him. Barnd, he said, you chose this path, but redemption is still possible. Barnd's laughter turned into a growling cough. Redemption? He spat. Call off your men and surrender. We will bind your wounds and take you with us. Andrew stood, weary but resolute, knowing that battles were won not only with swords, but choices. Barnd, defeated but unyielding, knelt before him. His eyes held defiance. Yet Andrew saw a flicker of fear, the realization that his crimes had caught up with him. Barnd, Andrew said, his voice firm. You've caused enough suffering. Surrender now, and we'll ensure a fair trial. Barnd spat at Andrew's feet. Andrew signaled at his fellow soldiers, ready to escort Barnd to the castle's dungeon. But fate had other plans. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the ancient oaks. A deafening crack echoed, and a massive limb crashed down, pinning Barnd to the ground. Andrew rushed forward, lifting the fallen branch. Barnd's eyes widened. Irony. Justice served by nature's hand. Andrew stood there in total shock. He hadn't wanted death, only retribution. Yet, here it was, a twist of fate. Alar approached, his gaze somber. You did the right thing, Swiftlight Speckle, said Alar. Andrew nodded solemnly. Andrew's adrenaline rush was gone. He felt like he might faint. Alar noticed Andrew becoming unsteady, and then Andrew dropped to the ground. Andrew woke up in his bedroom at home. He had a few bandages over his wounds. When his eyes fully adjusted, he saw Turo's wife and John sleeping in a chair. John snored very loudly for a little boy. Mrs. Ota? John? Andrew could hardly believe it. Are you all right? Is everything okay? Andrew asked. They woke up and smiled at Andrew. We're fine, Andrew, they said together. John got up and gently embraced Andrew where he was sitting up in his bed. Oh, my boy, you came back to me. She began to cry. She got up and said she had to let Turu and Carl know that Andrew was up and feeling better. Andrew, John whispered, I promise I won't tell anybody you were pretending to be the king. Thank you, John. I appreciate that. Andrew laughed. In his usually loud, hyper tone, he cheered. Yay! I'm so happy you're okay! You won! And you helped to save us all, Andrew! John hushed himself down. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'll give you some time alone so you can keep healing up. By the way, I told Mrs. Ota she just had to make some chicken pho the day you finally wake up to celebrate. John rubbed his belly, still whispering, This is the greatest day ever. He did a little happy dance, then gave Andrew one more quick hug and left the room. Andrew's memory started to piece back together. He still wondered how he ever got out of the jail cells. It's because of your prayer, Andrew, said a soft voice. It was Olive at the window. Andrew opened the window. Thank you, Olive. You're more than welcome, Andrew. Your prayer to God was heard even before you prayed. You could have chosen not to ask for help and not to believe, but you did. Your letter from the king explains that he has allocated funds to help support your household for generations. Andrew grabbed the letter and read. What Olive said was written in the letter, and then some. The king also provided Andrew with the king's official seal to grant him specialized training that would assist him in growing in his military rank, scholarship to school for him and his descendants, full admittance to the castle if he ever had need. No more waiting for a stamped letter, he chuckled to himself. And 10 acres of land to call his own. All he needed to do was to go down to the castle to sign the official documentation. I went to King Leo's wife and delivered a message to her informing her of her husband's condition and location. It was she who had sent nearly all of the Urian army her brother had assigned to her family and kingdom. Both her and her husband are well. Their son is also safe and sound. They wanted me to give you this. Another letter tied to the foot of the dove. In this letter was high thanks and offers of even more funds and resources that they intended to give directly to Andrew and his family. Back in the holding cell, Andrew had doubts that King Leo really had a secret gold mine, but the letter spoke of a share of the mine being legally bound to Andrew's name. In addition to other gifts, they were eager to award him in person as soon as he would be able to make the trip. Andrew couldn't continue reading. His whole body began to tremble because he was so taken aback by the sheer volume of blessings that were being poured out over him. "Rushing rivers of thanks to you, Olive," he said through tears. Olive flew away after sharing a few more words of encouragement. "Goodbye for now, but not forever," Olive said. Andrew fell to his knees, giving thanks to God for all he had done. Turu came in, fell to his knees as well, and embraced him. Mrs. Ota too. They sat and cried and gave thanks. John was right. This was indeed a great and wonderful day. And for Andrew, it was only the beginning.